Going on, Greg? Landfill, Stratton. Not too bad, man. How you doing? Adjusted here. How's y'all week been? Let's go another minute here. We already got 13 in here, so pretty good start off. Do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. Get some likes going on this thing. Try to beat this every single time when we start doing one of these. How's it going, Kentucky Prepper? Yeah, hopefully. So I'm shooting this one on my phone because I keep having issues with my laptop with live streaming for some reason. Can't figure out the issue. I don't know if it's just because my laptop's old. It's like 5, 6 years old. But I did buy a new one, so I'll be getting that tomorrow. And I have to play around with that one because I got a gaming laptop, but it doesn't have a cam. So I'm going to have to run the camera I use for photography and videos. So I bought a cable for that. So hopefully next weekend I'll be running off of that. Can actually do some rearranging in the gear room and then move this to down there. Hopefully that didn't come over, get too annoying. Get over sinuses. Oh, sorry to hear about your dad, Craig. I know the sinus issues thing, man. That I have a chronic issue with my nose. So like if you ever watch some of my videos, like you can hear me breathing. One, because my mic sensitivity, I've had to mess around with that, and for a while there, I had it set so high it was picking up every single sound. But I actually broke my nose when I was in high school. I never really got it fixed, so I have like a messed up, what do they call that, deviated septum. Well, weekend has been short. Yeah, man. I've been, I didn't get out to the woods very much myself. I got out a little bit Thursday, shot one video, so I'll probably be dropping that tomorrow, maybe. I got some homework I gotta do yet tonight for school, but I got like a basic axe skills video I'm gonna upload tomorrow. Start a little series going on with different tools and stuff. But the weekends, man, weekends are never long enough. I have a kind of a wonky work schedule. I usually work Thursday through Monday, or Friday through Monday. So I usually have off during the week so I can get out in the woods. Usually when there's no one out there, ideally. So going Rob, Bronk. Hell yeah, man. Hope you have a good trip. I need to get back out and do some camping myself. One of the reasons I bought an updated laptop is so I can kind of change how I edit. Oh, change how I edit my videos because I'm gonna switch to a completely different editing software, and really kind of increase the production with my videos. And I said this in the live before that the goal with my channel is I want to try to keep that authentic YouTube feel, how it used to feel like 5, 10 years ago. You know, when people were just getting big into it. Try to keep that, but also bring some, polish to the videos. How's it going, David? Master Paul. I don't know if I'm a master, man, but hey, appreciate it. How's it going, Jake? Black rifle, really? All right, so let's go. Let's run with that cannel. So I hear that a lot of times in a lot of my videos, people give me help for wearing black rifle shirts, and I kind of looked into it, and it could be for a variety of reasons. I know one thing that one article I read was that they claimed to hire a lot of veterans, and that was kind of fine not to be true. The simple point of it I look at it like this: it's a veteran-owned business, and for me, I always try to support veteran-owned businesses as much as possible. If you want to go down that, guys, I mean, like, there's a lot of people out there that are running businesses that are doing shady business. boosting up their resume or lying about their service, for the guys that run Black Rifle, from everything that I know, and I don't know any of those guys personally, but everything that I've gathered, they're representative of what the service they did. They're not kind of embellishing that, and sometimes it's just hard, especially in our economic situation we find ourselves now, if getting good amount of people in there. The nice thing with the vets is they do have resources to start their own businesses. So you do see a lot of them doing that. But if you wanna enlighten me on why you're saying Black Rifle, really shoot for it. Yeah, Craig. Woods times is important, especially for your mental health, man. It's like I didn't realize that as much until this year when I wasn't teaching multiple times per month and running back and forth to Ohio and driving 24 hours per class. How much that actually took a toll on me mentally. That's a big reason why, like over the last couple of years, my fitness has kind of suffered. I've gained a shit ton of weight, and this year, basically not doing anything really outdoors, just getting out hiking, doing photography for the most part. It's helped me really, really reset and get a clearer focus of where I wanted to go forward. So I always tell people, man, do not underestimate the power of getting out in the woods and just to clear your head. It does wonders. Yeah, Bill. Then I don't drink their coffee so much anymore. I'm kind of hooked on energy drinks at the moment. I got a caffeine addiction, so what you gonna do? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do anything else. So if the worst that is, I drink a ton of caffeine. I've always said, at least it's not meth. So, but I want to try to get back to drinking coffee more so, just so I'm not drinking a bunch of energy drinks, and because those things are expensive. But if you look at the post that kind of leading up for this live stream and kind of the title I have on here, it was talk about mastery, skill development, things like that. And you can go way down the hole with that topic in general. I've been on it a handful of times this year, unfortunately. Yeah, man, sometimes it's just a process of working through everything that's on your plate so you can get out there. I mean, there's times when I have 3 days off in a row that I don't even get out to the woods just because I'm so exhausted. But just baby steps. This is like I talked about with getting fit last weekend. Just make baby steps. Get out for a quick hike, get out for walk in a local park. Just a small little bit. Eventually it grows. Just like planting a seed. You don't have a full garden overnight. It takes time. Same thing with skills. A lot of people will think, if I go through this program, knock it out, then I'm qualified to do this, to be an instructor, to be a personal trainer, to be so forth and so on. And yeah, you've completed that program to do those things, but there's a lot more to it. And this is something I've learned before I even became a wilderness survival instructor, is the certificate or the certification or the degree basically just says, hey, at least know the knowledge. The whole other side of the coin is, can I teach someone else that knowledge? Being able to transfer that knowledge to someone else and have them do things at a proficient level is another skill all in itself. Some people can spend an entire lifetime trying to master that. And that's kind of, for myself, that's something that interests me a lot, and we'll dive into that in a little bit. Leadership. Can you confidently lead people? Can people, do you inspire confidence in the students that you're teaching? If the students are constantly questioning, does this guy know what he's talking about? What's this guy? He's constantly just reading all of his notes. Those things have a huge impact on how those students look at you and look at, the confidence they have in that instruction that you're giving them, that coaching, that mentoring. With personal training, I was out, when I was a personal trainer, I wasn't like ripped or, bodybuilder or anything crazy, but everything I taught my clients were very basic nothing crazy. I wasn't teaching them, high level stuff. I was teaching them a lot of basic stuff that when they implemented it, it started making big changes in their life. I know for one client I had, she was a big lady. I think she was getting ready to do what do they call it, a gastric bypass surgery. I think that was it. Basically, where she was kind of trying to shrink down her stomach so she could start losing weight. And I mean, she was over 6 foot tall, so she's this big person in general. And I know her doctor at the time was telling her, "Oh, only eat 900 calories a day, work out." And I basically told her, I was like, "Hey, if you do that, you'll lose weight, but it's not going to be sustainable. It's basically a short-term game that isn't going to pay off in the long run." So I, drew up a whole meal plan, broke it down how this is going to work, and basically double her calories. I told her to work out 1 hour a day, whether that's going for walks, coming to the gym, lifting, whatever you want to do, just be active for an hour. And in a month, I think she lost like close to 30 pounds. So, you know, a lot of times, especially with the rise of social media and all these influencers, everyone wants to show these sweet skills and all these awesome these feather sticks and all these crazy skills. And, there's definitely a time and place for that. Definitely saying, not saying that there isn't. But a lot of times people get away from those basics, like for me, a big thing that's always interested me in understanding is different training methodologies, different training pipelines, outside of fitness and wilderness survival. I've always been a pretty big history buff. Come from a military family, so I've always been around it. Watched. Couldn't even give you an accurate number of documentaries growing up. Actually, one of the books I'm reading right now is this book called Ruck Up or Shut Up. This is actually about SF assessment and selection. So I've read on Christ, I couldn't even tell you how many books I've read on different special operations training pipelines, Hell Week, and everything like that. Because for me personally, that stuff fascinates me. Understanding how the people going through it, if you're reading like a memoir type book, understanding their mindset as they're going through these different events, and then reading something like this. The guy that actually wrote this is a retired Green Beret, and understanding their thought process behind the different events, what they're critiquing and understanding and coaching people up on. Seeing both sides of that coin is just something that I'm absolutely obsessed with learning about. Every time I find a new book, I always end up buying it. I don't know, I have more than 3 bookshelves worth of books, whether that's wilderness survival skills, military history books, training books like this. So understanding that stuff is always fascinating to me. So, with, like, let's say, for instance, with the example of special operations, whether that's SF, SEALs, MARSOC, any of them, one of the biggest things you'll always see them preach is mastering the basics. And that's the same way I preach or approach wilderness survival. If you can master the basics and understand, all right, what tools can I carry with me that are going to essentially keep me alive? And then what can I supplement that off the landscape with? Like, for instance, if, let's say, all I had was, I was going out for a day hike, get turned around, now I'm stuck out there for the night. I have my poncho, or I may have a tarp. Chances are, if you're on a day hike, you're not carrying any sorts of sleeping gear with you. So in that scenario, what I would be looking for is, all right, what off the landscape can I use to create insulation? If I have pine trees, I can cut off pine boughs. I can do the same thing with leaves, create some sort of mattress for myself to give me that insulation. And it's going to take some time. I know when I took the winter survival course, hell, that was almost 5 years ago now. One of the shelters the first shelter we had to build was a debris shelter. And I seen guys just making some real big ones, and all I did is I found a pretty decently sized log that was down, put some logs across it, created a little shelter, and then I just piled pine barrels on the bottom, on top, and then I just cubby hold my way in there. Understanding those things that you can use out the landscape. I mean, you can supplement that, and you can survive for a night, for a few days like that. It's gonna be hell, ain't no doubt about it. But you can supplement those when you have, you know, not all the tools you wish you did. And that's a big thing with approaching the basics is understanding, all right, if I have some sort of cover, usually have some sort of, cutting tool with me, usually have a lighter, if not a little fire kit with me, because that doesn't take up a whole lot of space. If chances are I'm going to have some sort of bottle. Typically, I personally carry a metal bottle. So, if I have those, 4 or 5 things, you know, I can survive for a few days. Am I going to love it? Am I going to have the greatest time camping ever in the world? Probably not. But I can always supplement those shelter components off of what I can find off the landscape. That all comes from understanding the basics, those fundamentals of what's going to cause you the most issues in that situation, and then carrying the absolute minimum stuff like a cutting tool, metal container, some sort of cover, whether that's a poncho or some sort of tarp. I personally prefer some sort of tarp, and then I have a rain jacket, just because I've had mixed results with using a poncho as rain gear. Either it soaks through, or it just doesn't work for some reason. Let's see. Let's see what the comments are. But what they don't show you is how many times it took you to try and perfect that skill. Yeah, I mean, Jake hits it square on the head. Social media is just a snapshot of a moment in time. It's basically you're curating, and me running my own social media and doing my own YouTube channel. I do the same thing because what you're trying to show is the most ideal. And even I keep it real in some of my videos. You'll see in this camp or in this axe skills video when I'm making feather sticks, and I've never been huge on doing all the bushcrafty stuff. And my thought process has always been, as long as it's functional, that's what matters. I don't need it to be pretty if it's going to keep me alive or get what I need done. You know, when you see all these people constantly curating and trying to make things as ideal as possible, and obviously we want to strive for that, but that's just not reality. For me, I try to keep everything in perspective and realistic, and even in my videos, if it ain't going as well, I usually keep it in there and say, hey, just rolls like that sometimes. So basically with social media, just take everything you see with a grain of salt, because it's usually just a smaller snapshot of a bigger picture. It's not good with friction fire. Well, Stratton, to be completely honest with you, I even struggle with friction fire. I can crank up a bow drill, but there's been times I failed in front of a whole class, and that's just the reality of it. A lot of people want to sit there and claim, hey, I can knock out a bow drill anytime, any conditions, and that's simply not true. If it's soaking rain outside, like you're in the Pacific Northwest and it's been raining for a week, you ain't getting a bow drill off the landscape. If you are, you're putting in a ton of work to get to the material that can get that for you. Friction fire, I mean, that was one of the bane of my existence going through my advanced class. But similar to what I talked about last week, and the way that I trained and prepared myself for that was, I may not be able to get the bow drill on the first try, but I'm gonna sure as hell gonna have the stamina to keep trying at that thing for an hour straight and not burn out. While the guy next to me hits it twice and he's cashed out for 20 minutes and then has to try to regain that composure. Where I have that physical reserve, that stamina to just keep cranking at it until I get it. It's just like, what's the analogy? If a small stream of water constantly keeps hitting a rock, it's eventually going to cut through that rock. It's the same way I've always been my entire life. I may not be the absolute best. I may not be the most skilled, the most talented, but I'm sure as hell going to be the most perseverance, and I'm just going to keep trying and trying and trying until I get it. And that's just how I approach it. Excuse me, I got the hiccups here. Didn't show picking up wood. Yeah, and that's second part of that, Shredden, is like I've thought about making a bow drill video, and just showing a real step by step process. Going out there, finding it, processing it, and showing you how many times it may take me to get it. And I may do that maybe this winter, maybe in the spring. We'll see kind of how content goes down. How's it going, Adam? See you out there rucking away. It's awesome, man. Exactly, Jake. Um, a lot of influencers will just, spin the tale they want you to hear, um, just to sell something, or, to promote this or that. And, I get promotion stuff from companies all the time, and I usually mention that in my videos. Hey, I got this for free. Let's checking it out, whether it's good or not. And usually one of the things I always tell companies is, because a lot of them will tell you, hey, I want the video out in 10 days or 2 weeks, or they'll give you some time frame. And I was like, I'm going to try and get it out in that time frame. But I'm also going to want to try this stuff out for a while before I give it any kind of like positive feedback. So usually what I'll tell them is I'll do like an introductory video, but you ain't getting a full on review for at least a month, if not more, after I've used a product, even if they're paying me for it. Kentucky Prepper, bow drills and flint steel work, but the mountain man would have carried a bic if... Exactly. That's a great point, Kentucky. I thought about that. I think about this every once in a while, the thought props in my head, when I think about Nesmic and Kephart and all these guys. When people sit there and say, oh, this is traditional gear, or hey, this is traditional, to keep it real, or whatever terminology you want to say, it's, well, if you look back at what they had at the time, it was usually the lightest or close to lightest or most, cutting edge gear that they could possibly find or have made. I mean, even I think as Nesmic says in his book, he had his hatchet made. If you extrapolate and put them in our time period now, I sure as hell bet they ain't carrying no canvas stuff around. They ain't carrying around no wax canvas tarps or nothing like that. They're going to be carrying around lighter stuff that still accomplishes what their goals are, getting them outdoors, enjoying their time out there, and just having a great time out in wild areas. So I always try to keep, what I'm doing in perspective with that. Because there's definitely grounds for holding on to that, that traditional period stuff, but that doesn't dictate everything that I'm doing in the outdoors. It's cool to look back at that stuff, and once in a while, like I actually designed my own wax canvas pack that I'm going to start looking around for a maker to make it for me, and it's kind of a cross between that traditional, oilcloth or wax canvas material with some modern features to it. So hopefully, if I can find someone that can make that for me, and then start busting out some traditional camping videos once in a while in here, and get back to just getting out there, showing skills as they work, throwing some gear reviews, throwing some skill videos, stuff like that. Yeah, and that's exactly right, Jake. You can sit there and crank out a skill and try and try and try and try, and you can't figure out what the hell you're doing wrong. And then just one day you do it and you understand, hey, this small adaptation made the world of difference for me. Like with a bow drill, for instance. What really connected the wires for me and lit that light bulb, when I was doing my intermediate class, because I was always taught, your spindle's got to be from pinky to thumb tip, and that's the length that you want. And I did that, and that can work for me. But at that class, my first one, banged it on like 2-3 tries, and I was like, oh hell, I got this. This ain't no problem. Second one comes around, and I'm just struggling. I'm getting spindles that are like this big, and I'm just like, what the hell am I doing wrong? Then there was a guy that actually drove all the way from Washington State to Florida. Him and his brother did the whole course in fucking sweatpants. He gave me his spindle, and he was, I don't know, at least 6'3" or 6'4". So his spindle was like at least almost 1.5 times mine. And I used his, and like that was the game changer for me, because what I was finding out when I was kneeling over and trying to lock my wrist into my shin, because of my body geometry, that I would get cramps in my hip flexors. But using that longer spindle, I didn't have to bend over as much and get as hunchback. So I didn't get those hip flexor spasms or cramps anymore. So always, ever since then, I've always gone with a little bit longer spindle. And there's still times when that just doesn't work for me. DeVoe, physical fitness is the non-sexy thing that really helps survival training. Hey, man, greetings from Nova Scotia. Yeah, I mean, physical fitness. I mean, that and mindset are probably two of the most underrated survival skills you can develop. You know, everyone thinks, oh, I walk around for my job all day long. It won't be no problem for me to trek across the woods. Um, or the other one that I always hear is, oh, in a bug out situation, I'm not going to need that much calories because I only eat this amount every day. And yeah, you might get through it, but do you just want to get through it, or do you want to thrive through it? It's the same way. Like if you were in a survival situation, do you just want to get by, or do you want to thrive in that hellish situation you find yourself in? Skills are all relative. You can train a ton of different skills, but you might find yourself in a completely different situation. For me, I try to get a broad range of skills, especially in our modern age. Like, there's gonna be very few times you're not gonna be able to find something to boil water in, or collect water in, or find shelter. There's a will, there's a way. One of the harder things it's gonna be to reproduce is a knife or some sort of cutting tool. This ain't the hunted. You ain't gonna be forging one out of a leaf spring that you find in some random vehicle on the side of a river. It just takes too much more than that. Horse and buggy with traditional gear. Yeah, I don't see any bushcrafters or any influencers out there going on a horse and buggy overnighter. Might be an idea for some of you out there. My sister said you smell like a ball butt crack. Well, Tony, I don't know what to say to your sister, but maybe she should be getting her nose and balls or butt cracks. Say snicker, but remove this S. Alright. How about no? Noob here. Just wanted to give you a shout out from Texas. Keep the great work you're doing. I like your educational videos. Alright, appreciate it, Clint. I was actually in your state not too long ago. A couple weeks ago, I was in San Antonio. Hotter than hell there. Did not enjoy it. It wasn't as humid as it is here in Wisconsin. But then again, we got 1,000,001 lakes around us. So, personal note, I was on a reservation for the first time. Hell yeah, man. There's surprisingly more out there than you can actually realize. Can I donate? I can look at how to set that up. I know I could set it up through PayPal. I'm not sure if I have like super chat set on here, but I know they take a percentage of that. But Cruz, I'll look at setting that like up a PayPal like donate link, and start throwing it down in the description if you guys feel inclined to donate. One of the things I've always said with my channel is don't feel like you got to buy anything through my links, or anything like that. I greatly appreciate any kind of support you want to throw out, but never feel like I'm pushing product to say, hey, buy this. That's a comment I always get from people that, hey, you're posting this because you want us to buy this, or why do all these survival instructors push this gear? And for me, it's not so much about pushing the gear, it's pushing the options out there. For me, since this is something I want to make a career out of, I want to be able to buy these things, give my feedback. So when, let's say, you're going to go look at a backpack, You can search, Kafaru shape charge, or whatever backpack you're looking at, and hopefully one of my videos come up and I can give you a perspective. Maybe not the perspective, because even for myself, I watch tons of videos before I usually make a purchase on something, but it gives you a variety of perspectives to see how a particular item, worked. So that's my goal with my videos. Um, am I going to take advantage of companies that want to pay me to do a video? Yes, but I always straight up, first thing I tell them is like, even if you're paying me, I'm not guaranteeing you a good review. Um, for me, that comes back to the honesty and integrity of my channel. You know, um, I'm not going to push something just because someone paid me to push it. I've gotten tons of stuff for free, and I've always been straight up honest with them. Like, hey, this may be made into a video if it performs well. Maybe a longer term video. Like I have 2 power stations that I still got to shoot videos on that I've been using for pretty much close to a year now. Um, but I'm honest with companies and say, hey, you may not like this response, but I'll give you a straight up honest review. Like I ain't gonna bullshit you. I ain't gonna bullshit my audience or anyone that comes across those videos. I'll give you my opinion, and then that's it. If you want to go forth and pay me to do that, then awesome. If not, then so forth and so on. Yeah, no kidding. $10,000, huh? I'm pretty sure that would be some sort of tax issue. So, great live chat. Thanks, Stratton. Yeah, I want to try to make these more of a thing, and then get back in the swing of doing videos. This last month has been so hectic with going to Texas, getting back, and then getting and finding some sort of groove with my schoolwork. Because I'm actually looking at applying for a few different things, and I need to bump my GPA up before I can do that. So I've been putting a lot of work into that and kind of putting videos on a little bit of a back burner. But this month, now that it's October, crazy enough, I want to start getting out more, do some more camping now that it's not hotter than hell out because it's so humid here in Wisconsin. But back to skills. That I mentioned this, was it last week or the week before? Before I became an instructor, if I could go back in time, one of the things that I would do, and I've told other people that have asked my opinion on it, is I would go back and learn from as many different people as I could. Not so much that I don't believe in the one school that I was learning at, but it gives you a better perspective on different teaching methodologies. Go back to that training methodologies like I was talking about that I like learning about. Like for me, one of the biggest impacts I had as I found my way to instruct and transform more from being an instructor to a coach and mentor was Matt Mercer from Black Hat Bushcraft. If you've ever met Matt, he's probably the nicest person I've ever met in my entire life. He can get angry, but I don't think I've ever seen him angry. I've only ever heard about it. And the way I've seen him engage with students, coach them up and, talk through it, because, he runs a karate studio or a dojo for a living. That's his business outside of instructing. So, and he's working with all age ranges. So being able to learn from him as an instructor, not so much learning skills, but as learning the skills to be the instructor and coach and mentor that I wanted to be. I learned from him, and I still remember the class that was like the pivotal changing moment for me. It was a basic class. Students were doing pretty well. There's usually some sort of attrition rate, whether that's just from physical exertion, whatever the case may be. But there was this father and son busting their ass, just really working really, really hard. And the son was kicking ass. Like he was doing a lot of the stuff, and the dad was just, helping him along. But because of, sticking to the standard and so forth and so on, they weren't in line to get a patch. And for me, that was like the toughest conversation to have with a student, because that was the first time I had to do that. And I think I was even teaching that class with Matt, and I asked him, how should I approach this? They're working really hard, but they're just not gonna make the cut. And he's like, just be honest with them. You know, just nothing else. Just be completely honest with them. So I did, and they ended up leaving right after I had to talk with them. And as someone who went through that training program myself and understand the ups and downs, to see how much they were investing in, like, in the work that they were doing at the class, to just be like, all right, we're not patching, so we're leaving, was probably one of the hardest things that as an instructor I had to go through. So for myself, at that point, I was like, all right, I'm going to completely change, my perspective on this, especially at a basic level. You know, there's tons of conversations on what entails a basic class, what should the standards be, so forth and so on. And from that day on, I didn't become, I didn't just throw the standards out the window, but I looked at them in a more broad perspective. You know, what was that student doing in the class? Were they just getting by and, riding the coattails of their partners? Were they, screwing off the entire time? Were they trying to showboat and show you what they know? I took it all into perspective and gave them the patch when I feel like they've actually earned it. And not so much because they've passed all these, tasks, but because they're working hard to make that change and learn that skill, and then eventually work on that path to mastering it. So that's something, anyone who's an instructor, coach, mentor, you know, my word of advice is understand how you want to approach students. Do you want to be that drill instructor that drills them in the ground and critiques them on every little thing? Or do you want to look at the bigger picture of what's going on, and are they really putting in all the effort they possibly can to do their absolute best, or are they just slacking off? For me, I want that person who's putting every ounce of effort and energy they have into accomplishing the task, versus someone maybe super skilled, but they half-ass everything and ride the coattails of their partners. Let's see what we got back in here. Let's see. Clint, can you get the orange survival tarp instead of green? Do you mean like the emergency survival blankets? They should have. You should be able to find orange ones on the market. I personally don't carry those. They're just the bulk and how fragile they are, because they're going to wear out sooner or later. If I'm going to carry particular gear with me and work on skills with that particular gear, I want to be able to use it over and over and over again so I can master that particular piece of gear. So I always resort to carrying an actual tarp, and then I carry usually one of the SOL brand Mylar blankets, and it's actually something I picked up from Josh Enyart. Is, if I need that reflective inside, I can use my duct tape and tape it to my tarp. Even Jake, I know he showed like a heavy duty version of that, and it's significantly smaller than those survival blankets. I've been meaning to actually pick up one of those and run those through a kit. May do that for me and Jake and Tony's class here in November. If you're able to make Graphy, I'm gonna have to look into that, especially for this next one. Once I get my new laptop and hopefully work out this live stream issue, why I can't run it on my laptop. But I'll definitely have to do that. Exactly, DeVoe. Everyone has their own favorite way of doing and teaching things. You're wise to learn from many sources. It's like that old saying. There's a 1,000 ways to skin a cat. I've always approached survival is the same exact way. Just because it's taught one way at this school, this way at another, and then this way at a third, doesn't necessarily mean any of them are wrong. But you find what works best for you. Like I did I actually just had a comment on it. That's why I remember the ridge line with the carabiner. Super simple. Literally anyone can set up that ridge line. You tie one bow line in one end, either do a marlin spike or you can run it right through that end, take it to the other side, make a lark's head, put the carabiner, wrap it around twice, tighten it down. One of the simplest ones out there. I'm actually going to be doing another Ridgeline video here soon on the system I'm actually going to use moving forward from now on. But, find whatever method works for you. I've always been a big proponent of, even when I was instructing at the school I was at, I would get harped on, why would you do it that way when we teach it this way? And like, well, the more ways I learn how to do this is the more tools I have in my own toolbox. If someone's not getting it this way, I might be able to explain it another way, or show them, hey, we ran through all this, we have some extra time, I can show you this evolution. And I've been asked questions by students in classes that I just didn't have the answer for. And a thing with being an instructor, coach, and mentor is, when you don't have an answer, don't try and bullshit it. Just straight up tell them, hey, I'm not familiar with that, so I can't give you an answer, but we'll find out together after class is wrapped up. And I've done that multiple times with students. I've never been a big fan of bullshitting people. I've just been like, hey, if I don't know, I don't know, but we'll learn this shit together, and that only makes us all better. My preferred cutting tool, Jenny, is I actually have two. It's actually a Dirtbound Savage, the first one that Tony made for me. And then I had another custom knife made earlier this year by, I think it was Backyard Blades. I'll post it up this week on my Instagram, and I'll probably do a video on it as well. But I had a custom blade made as well from that guy out in Utah called the Karasu. It's Japanese for the Raven. Those are my two favorite knives. I personally like a flat grind versus a Scandi. I've used tons of Scandi knives. Convex I've used a little bit. I like both of them, but it's just more comfortable for me personally using the flat grind. I don't feel like I'm having to work the knife as much. It just all feels a little bit more natural for me. That's another thing with your tools, your cutting tools, for instance. Don't be afraid to veer away from what the experts say to use. Try all the different grinds, because you'll end up finding one that you like a little bit more than the other. You're exactly right. Having that talk with students, Jake, especially in that situation with that father and son, I sat there a long time and I was like, man, what could I have done different to put them in a better spot? But if you've ever been my student, you know that I'm pretty attentive to everyone as equally as I possibly can. Generally, like when I would work with students, if I seen that they were really nailing it down and didn't need a ton of assistance, I usually just let them do their thing and then focused on the students that were maybe falling behind. Or if someone was really, really excelling, and I've known them for, whether through social media or through other classes, I usually would say, hey man, you mind helping out your partner while I can help out everyone else? That's the other thing with being in the position I was and having other people going through an instructor program, was ingraining those like leadership lessons along the way. Not just, complete this course so you pass this course for the certification. Is giving them development moments along the way. Allowing them to hop in and, just teach their partners. If their partners are struggling, say, hey, you mind running your partner through it? I know you got this, so I can focus on everyone else. That allows all those students coming through not only to get a more well-rounded understanding of things, but also that person that's hoping to do the same thing that you're doing helps them develop some skills that they can carry forward with them. You're just passing that along, paying it forward, in my opinion. Carlos, amigos, greeting from Puerto Rico. Glad to have you here, Carlos. Well, been there. I'm a judo instructor. Some are just chasing the next belt, seeing the effort, and just missing out on the skills. Hard. Yeah, exactly. There's a term for it, like a patch chaser. Really, I've always gone into courses because I want to develop skills. If I got a patch, I got the patch. It's cool and all. but those skills will last forever. That patch, I could lose that patch. Um, Circumstances could change, and that patch doesn't mean as much as it to me as the time I went through it. But those skills will always be valued to me. I'm actually looking right now. I was looking at some courses earlier today of getting into some tracking classes next year. I think I'm actually going to go out to Colorado and take one. As I finish my degree, one of my goals is to bring some skills into whatever profession I end up going into. So learning tracking is something that's been on my radar for the last couple of years, and I just haven't went after it. And I think next year I'm gonna start going after it and going to some tracking classes around the country and start learning some things to try and give them additional pointers. Exactly, DeVoe. That was the thing. Since before I became an instructor, I was a team leader and then upper management for a security contracting company. So I was running events, at venues with 10,000 plus people in attendance with like a staff of 40, 50 people. So I had to manage 100 parts and be all over the place all at one time. So thankfully through that job, I was able to, develop the skill set of being aware of what's always going on around me and keeping tabs on, all right, these people are doing this right now, these people are doing this over here, and then always keeping aware of what's going on, even if it's a small snapshot. I'm like, all right, I can see where they're at, and I can kind of, piece it together. And as I make my rounds, I start building a better picture of understanding, all right, everything's working as it needs to be, or hey, these lines are taking way too long, these people are going way too in depth with searches. How can I dial this back and say, hey, we need to get these people through, just so it's not congested and causing issues there or upsetting the people that at the venue that are in charge of everything. So those skills all transferred over to when I became an instructor, because now I went from trying to manage a staff of 50 and then a crowd of 10,000 down to maybe a class of 30 people, and it's a lot more manageable. It's just skill sets that you bring along and changing your perspective on how you look at those skill sets. Someone could have like, well, none of those skill sets from that job are going to transfer over to being an instructor. But there's so much more to being an instructor than just, oh, I can show you how to make a bow drill. I can show you how to tie this knot. There's so many different layers, and it's just a matter of how deep into those layers you want to go. Adam, as a former student of yours, I can confirm that what you said is accurate. You got the heart in it 100%. Exactly, man. Like, I know I still remember your class. There's a lot of students that like stand out for me over the course, and like for me, it was always, all right, what's the effort they're putting in, and if I can help them break that barrier that's stopping them from getting over that hump is the biggest thing. That's something that develops over time. Someone brand new to teaching isn't going to quite understand that. They're just going to kind of regurgitate whatever. They're going to sit there and read their notes line by line. And I've never been that way. Even when I gave speeches for classes, I usually just go off bullet points, because then I can recall everything as I read whatever term that I have written down. And I did the same thing when I taught. I would just write down stuff on the board, just bullet points, and then I elaborate on all of them. And that all comes in time. Your comfortability with the subject matter you're teaching or giving speeches on or conveying. Thanks. Appreciate all the funky emojis. Let's see. Kentucky Prepper. Is it better to be truthful than pass someone who may end up injuring themselves or someone else later because they may thought they knew how to do it? So usually what I would do, so let's say I see someone giving tons and tons of effort, but they're just not quite there. I usually pull those students aside at some point during the course. So if it's a 2.5 day course, that first night, I'll bring them aside, say, hey, is there anything I can help you with? I'll stay out here, as late as I possibly can to help you get with whatever you're understanding. Or if they make it to the end of that course and I give them a patch, I usually try to catch them either before that patch out or before they take off and say, hey, man, you put in a lot of heart, you showed a lot of effort this weekend, but you really, really got to work on getting these skills down before you think about teaching someone or getting after it. I always try to give students feedback as it's happening and say, hey, man, you're struggling with this. Let's work on this a little bit. Or, if a student, even if they're not one assigned to me, would come up to me and ask me, hey, can you kind of run me through this? Um, I always try to focus as much as I can to get them as much of an understanding as I possibly can in that condensed time period as possible, so that they don't go out there and injure themselves. And give them just that honest feedback. Hey, you're getting there. You're just not there yet. Let's see. What's your thoughts on caches? Sometimes work over. So DeVoe, with caches, uh, I'm actually writing up a video right now about get home bags, and like, let's say I'm trying to get back home. I don't necessarily know if a cache is absolutely necessary in that situation, but it's all relative. If I'm a couple hundred miles away from home and I'm traveling that route frequently, I may think of setting up one cache along that route, so at least I have something to stop and grab if I'm getting myself back home. On the flip side, if I'm trying to get away from home to, let's say, a bug out location and it's 500 miles away, you're not taking everything in one pack in one trip in 500 miles. Even through hikers, they stop for resupplies. So I think of caches as the same way, is just to resupply some things to get me to the next stop, so forth and so on, until I get to my final destination. That's just kind of like my thoughts on caches in a nutshell. I could probably dive into more in depth in a video on that down the road. Yeah, Carlos. Sean put out a great video today. I didn't finish watching it quite yet because I was watching a little bit through on my breaks at work. But Sean's a very tried and true guy. When he finds something that he likes and works, he runs with that and he sticks with that. And he usually doesn't change from that. Where like me, I'm constantly rotating things rotating things in and out of my kit, just because I'm kind of a gear nerd and I like trying out new things. But Sean, he's like a tried and true, like, this stuff works. I don't need anything else. I don't need nothing fancy. Definitely a lot to learn from Sean. Like, if you didn't catch one of my live streams talking about me becoming an instructor and like that pipeline, Sean was my main instructor during all of that. He was at damn near all of my courses, I think, except for maybe one or two out of like the 6 or 7 classes I took. So everything I learned skill-wise, I learned from Sean. Obviously, I went into the program knowing some skills, but like that next level that I learned, a majority of that came from Sean. And there was other instructors that were a part of that, but he was the mainstay in all the courses that I took. Jenny, do you ever travel by water or strictly ground travel as your outdoor adventures, less skills, hunting, fishing preferences? So I don't canoe a whole lot. Actually, think I've only gone maybe a couple times in my life. Main reason for that is I have no buoyancy and I can't swim very well. So maybe down the road, I've looked at actually buying some pack raft that's like 3 pounds and I can fit inside my pack. Problem is, the one I'm looking at is like ranges from like $700 to $1,000. So until I can really get my channel going and I make a steady amount of money off of it, then I might invest in something like that. But I don't do it a whole lot. It's definitely something I'm interested in though, because that's an interesting dynamic to add to it. Can definitely build off it. For hunting and fishing, I'm kind of ADD, so fishing sometimes is a struggle for me because I'm not patient enough to sit there and fish. I do hunt. I'm actually, about a month and a half, we got hunting gun season here in Wisconsin. one of these years I want to jump into bow hunting. But I'm all for hunting and fishing. Um, I thought about trapping for a while, but it's just I've been around classes enough that I'm like I find it interesting, but I don't have the huge desire to get out and do it myself. I think I fall more towards hunting and fishing rather than trapping. It's important to be more of a coach and not a robot reading from the notes. If you're constantly reading from your notes, that means you don't know what you're teaching. Just having bullet points though keeps you on track. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Jake. You know, a lot of people think an instructor is just cranking out, regurgitating something out of a textbook. I mean, it's the same way our education system is set up. You know, it's all about memorize all this stuff. All right, we have a quiz, we have this, we have that. Where once you understand the skills, now can you put those into context in different situations? And that's something I always try to do with students, or if I'm explaining something to someone, I always try to put it in context of a situation. Like a lot of times, I get the question, "What's the most important survival skill?" First thing I tell them, well, it's all depends where you're at. Like, if am I in the desert, then it's probably either getting out of the sun or finding water. Um, a lot of the times, my answer after that is, for me personally, I believe it's navigation. Because if you always know where you're at, you can never get lost, and you can always find your way out of wherever you're at. So for me personally, I feel navigation is the primary skill you should work on trying to master, and then try to understand some of these primitive skills. Um, but like I said, with a lot of stuff, it's all relative. What do you find interesting? For me, I find navigation really, really interesting. So that plays into why I feel it's the most important skill to learn, especially from what I've seen people try to learn with navigation. You know, someone may teach it and it's like everyone in the room is completely lost. And when I would teach it, not to sit here and try to say that, I'm this perfect instructor, because obviously I'm not, but I have my strengths, and one of those strengths is teaching navigation. Like I can dumb it down or explain it in such a simple way that there's no way you're not going to understand how to navigate. Like I just break it down into such simple terms and say, hey, get this here, do that, boom, you're on your way. And I actually shot a basic compass video a couple weeks ago, and I got home and I just wasn't happy with it, so I didn't end up editing or uploading it. But I'm going to reshoot that and try and get a little bit better. But that's the other thing with being an instructor, is finding out where your strengths are at and using those to help the team that you're working with. One person doesn't have all the answers. They have their weaknesses, just like all we do. But knowing how to utilize the strengths of your team is extremely important. Same thing with students. Showing them, hey, you're really, really good with this, so why don't you help your team out by understanding it a little bit better in the downtime, or wherever you may be at, because any team is only as strong as its weakest link. If you're not doing anything to elevate your team, if you're just trying to elevate yourself and keep everyone, down below you, you're doing a disservice to yourself, number one, because that team is going to say, well, hell, I don't want to help you at all. I'm going to go do my own thing. Two, if you bring everyone up to that same level, you're only improving your capabilities as a whole. Pat, how's it going, man? Appreciate you liking the videos. Devil Dog Prepper, missed a lot, but we'll go back and watch the replay. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, we've hit on a lot. That's the thing I like with these live streams, is in an hour. Sometimes we go a little bit over that, but I can hit a lot of different topics, even if it's at just a surface level. I try to go pretty deep enough to where it might spark an interest in one of you to deep dive in it for yourself. Like this, like I was saying earlier, my fascination with understanding different training methodologies and training pipelines. For me, number one, I get a lot of motivation for that. That's kind of why I'm reading this Ruck Up or Shut Up book. And for you that have been in a little bit earlier, this is a book I'm referring to. I don't really have plans to enlist, but I like to understand, that preparation to go to selection, because that's probably one of the hardest things someone could put themselves through. The other reason I'm reading this is I want to do Go Ruck selection at some point. Um, I'm nowhere near the point where I'd feel ready to do that, but this just helps me get motivation to do that. Motivation, I mean, is another skill all of itself. That can diminish over time, just like anything else. Like if you don't practice navigation, your chances are you're going to get pretty rusty. Thankfully, I got lucky when Josh Enyart taught me how to teach with map and compass along with Sean at that winter class, where it's just been ingrained in my brain ever since. I could go a year without touching a map and compass. I pick it up, look at it a little bit, and then it all comes back, and I'm just off and I'm running. So, you know, biggest thing from this live stream is, focus on skills, because skills are important. Not just ones to pass a particular class, but skills that translate to other areas of life. Leadership. I'm actually taking a leadership class right now for my degree as one of like my core classes, and I find that fascinating because that ties into psychology, and I took a lot of psychology. I don't know why I just didn't pick a minor at least in psychology, but psychology we use it every single day. Every time you're interacting with someone, you're using psychology to some degree. So I'm fascinated by understanding how people work, and it translates over to being an instructor. Carlos, are you still teaching at the Pathfinder School? No, I left the Pathfinder School in January. It was just my time to leave. I basically, for me personally, felt I hit my development there as much as I was going to. And even, with all that I put into it, I was never taking that next step, and it was kind of taking away from me pursuing my own things because I was expending so much energy driving back and forth to Ohio, 2-3 times a month. If you didn't catch one of my other live streams, to drive down to teach a class one way was 12 hours of driving. Now, I didn't do that usually in one day because I'd be absolutely garbage the next day. I usually broke it up into about 2 6-hour driving days, sometimes 8 hours of driving, depending if I make some stops. But you think if you just time on the road, that's 24 hours per class. So, times that by, hell, I don't even know how many classes I taught over 3 years. That's a lot of time on the road. And it just took away from me having energy to pursue what I wanted in life. So it was my time to go, and I felt I hit where I was, and I took off. And there's other reasons, but I won't ever go into those in public here. Devil Dog Prepper. Haven't done land nav in so long. Might get lost. Hey, happens to the best of us. I've gotten lost on a couple of courses. Funny story back in my basic class. So when I took my basic class, this would have been in October 2018, so 5 years ago. Dan Wolwack from Cold Cracker Bushcraft was my instructor. After day one, I think of the 6 students he had, I was the only one left. So I got bumped over to Sean's team. And on our first land nav, we're going, and we're way off. We know what the hell we were doing. And Sean was like a woods ninja. He popped out of nowhere. And I'm pretty aware of my surroundings all the time. And I remember looking at him, I'm like, man, where the hell did you come from? And he's like, this is just what I do. And he just popped out of nowhere, and he's like, where are you guys going? He's like, you guys are way off. Let's go back. And he remediated us there. That was one of the most funny stories, I think, going through the instructor program that I remember, is just Sean popping out of absolutely nowhere. Jenny, let's see. I know there's a lot already out there, but need a clear understanding for myself. I hope you do a map and compass series. So I'm definitely going to do a map and compass series. I've been kicking around how I want to do that, because like with that basic compass video I shot, it was hard to get the angles I wanted. So I think one day I'm just going to go out and that's going to be the only video I shoot, just to make sure that I get the absolute right angles I want. But once I get that video out, the follow-up video will be adding a map to that, and then eventually leading along that. I have a bunch of books on land navigation that I'm going to start going through again, just to brush up on things, and then eventually be able to navigate just off the landscape, because that's a skill I've always wanted to learn, and I can do it to a degree. But I want to be like absolute confident, be like, all right, based off this, that, and the other, I go this way, and I'm gonna head where I want to go. But that'll definitely be a video that comes out in the future. I watched 2 channels recently for rucking advice. Yeah, though I watched both those channels as well. Adam, Grunt Proof and Gritty Soldier, they both put out really, really good content. I do watch their videos from time to time. DeVoe, have you thought about a high-level overview of all the land navigation subjects? So I could probably do that as like a land nav intro. It just run through how I look at land nav, like a basic level or simple level, all the way up to like more complex, like navigating off of just the landscape or nature. So I'm gonna think on that one some more and really, really break down that video, because that'll be a really, really cool series. I've seen a lot of people put out good land nav content, but I can't say I've ever seen someone break down land navigation quite to that extent. So I might have to do that. Y'all have any more questions for me? We'll stay on here for like another 10 minutes or so. Answer any questions that y'all have and anything that you're hoping to see in videos. Because I always try and catch some ideas from what you threw out there in the comments, through these chats on other social media platforms. I'm trying to think if there's anything else with like skills and development. I mean, a big thing, don't be afraid to just get out there and get after it. When I started taking courses, I never took any courses. I just went solo by myself, drove that long stretch down to Ohio, took classes, and was just off with the races ever since. That's just kind of how I operate. I do things on my own, and I'm pretty independent, sometimes to a fault, but that's another skill that I have to learn, is how to ask for help when I need it. But moving forward, let's see. This week, got a couple days off, so I'm gonna try and get out, shoot a couple videos. I gotta work the ins and out of the new laptop I'm getting tomorrow, because that should help with video editing significantly, because it's 4 times more powerful processing wise than the laptop I currently have. So I should be able to breeze through editing pretty quickly. But learning the skill with the new editing software that I'm going to be using is going to be the struggle. Plus, I'm going to start diving into some different photography and editing stuff. So I'm constantly learning something new. I guess that's the one benefit of having a squirrel brain, is I'm always bouncing from one thing to the next. Hardest part is staying on one long enough to really master it. All right, let's see what we got in here. Jenny, honestly, I don't know why there's not a lot of tree specific. So even with me, like, I would say I'm pretty skilled. Like, I have a pretty high level of skill when it comes to the woods. I still can't. I can identify a good amount of trees. I can't identify a ton of them or a lot of plants. That's definitely one area that I kind of lack in. I know which ones to look for if I want to do particular things. Like if I'm looking to make a bow drill, I know what types of wood to look for. If I'm looking for fire materials, I know what kind of resources to look for. Some edible plants I know, but it's never been a topic that like I've dove heavily into. And the thing you always have to balance out with some of these videos you put out, especially in terms of like edible plants or like mushrooms, let's say. Mushrooms are fascinating because there's so many different varieties out there, but the thing you have to contest with is putting out the right information. So someone who watches it doesn't go out think they found the same mushroom and here it turns out to be poisonous and it gives them some issues. So that's more of like an ethical thing someone has to kind of balance when they're putting out those videos. So that might be why some people haven't put out a ton of them. I'm not 100% sure. Reason I haven't is I know a few, especially in my area. I know which ones I'm always looking for stuff. And maybe down the road I can extrapolate on those videos a little bit more. But I know for me personally, I usually shy away from that just because there's a lot of variance in some plants and some mushrooms out there. Where in Ohio was that? The school? That's in Jackson, Ohio. So that's like southeastern Ohio. It's what, about an hour north of West Virginia. So that's where I taught for 3 years. Be sure and mention the class. So yeah, so Kentucky Prepper brings up a good thing. So coming up here later this month and then next month, I have some classes going on. So what is it? I think the 27th through the 29th in Sheridan, Indiana. Me and Tony are putting on a class. If you are interested in that, shoot me a DM or shoot me an email. My email is adaptablesurvival@gmail. Don't flood me with a bunch of bullshit, but I'm always receptive to answering people's questions. But that one will be in Sheridan, Indiana. And then next month, I think it's November 10th through the 12th. I have posts on my social media about these. Me, Tony, and Jake are putting on a class at Jake's property. So if you're interested in either of those classes, reach out to me through any social media or email, and I will get you the information so you can get signed up for those. Both of those classes are extremely reasonably priced. The one me and Tony are doing in Indiana is $150, and then the one me, Jake, and Tony are doing is $175. If you look at the landscape of classes, it's probably some of those budget-friendly classes you can find. For us, it's more about teaching people, making that connection, and building those people up versus like striving to make a profit. Because obviously, we want to make some money doing this because we love doing this, and we want to make a career out of it. But we also try and balance that with understanding that, especially this current situation we find ourselves in as a country and globally, that a lot of people don't have a ton of extra funds. So we're trying to still get classes out there so people can get out, get some training, get some time in the woods with like-minded people, get some coaching up, pick people's brains that have a little bit more woods time than them, and just have a good old time. It's always fun with those two guys. Let's see here. Plants and trees is also quite geographically specific. The forest in Atlantic Canada and Maine is different than in the South. Oh, 100%. Like for me, where I'm at in Wisconsin, like I'm probably on like one of the furthest closest edges of like before we start hopping into like boreal forest. And I'm kind of like in that middle ground from like where I was teaching in Ohio. That was a damn jungle in the middle of summer. That can get spots in here in Wisconsin like that. But we have, hell, I don't even know how many lakes are here, but we're surrounded by water. So we deal with humidity, tons of bugs, all sorts of different plants grow. Usually what I tell people is, figure out which ones are most, and then start going out and trying identifying those. Be the easiest way of learning those things. As you get comfortable with that, you can branch out, jump to the next state over, or go to a class in a completely different area of the country and learn some different plants and trees. How's it going, wild man? Yeah, man, it's gonna That's going to be a fun class. Can't wait to do that. Watch King, how's it going? So that's definitely a great value. I know for sure, and I don't want to speak for Tony and Jake. I know we all struggle with like figuring out the price point on that, but to get things going, you know, starting off with a pretty easily manageable price point, not only to kind of like offset some of the travel costs, but just ensure that people get a good class for a good price. But we've been on here for hour 15 minutes or so I'm gonna hop off so I can go knock out some of my homework. I appreciate all of you tuning in. I think this might have been the highest viewed episode I've had so far. So I really appreciate that. I say it in my videos, and I can't express this enough. I appreciate all the support you give my channel. Small channel, so I'm not raking in tons of cash every month. You know, I'm lucky if I crack $200 a month off of some of my videos, but that's not always my primary. You know, it'd be great if I raked in a full-time living from YouTube, and hopefully one day I get there. But it's all about getting out education, building that community, and then just learning all the stuff together is usually my big drive. Sorry, I mean specifically not a lot any YouTubers, and just an idea for yeah. So it's definitely something that I'll look at. There's some really good plants and trees that I know for certain here in Wisconsin, so I can definitely do a video on that in the future. Take her easy, DeVoe. Carlos, take her easy, my man. Yeah, Devil Dog. So every Sunday at 8 p.m. Central. So if you're Eastern, I think that's 9 time. But yeah, 8 p.m. Central. It's just easy to remember that, and then just adjust that wherever you're at. So that's the goal moving forward. Every Sunday, 8 o'clock. If I can't for some reason, I usually will say that on the community tab or on my social medias. But appreciate talking with you guys tonight. I will catch you next week. Watch out for at least one video this week, possibly two if I get real motivated.